Good morning, Chris. How you doing today?
Hi, Ron. Doing great. Very excited to dive in today. We're going to be talking about the catalog system integration. And this is a really potent topic. There's a lot here that we're going to unpack. So let's just dive right in and kind of go high level and give folks an idea of some of the different areas we're going to be covering today.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's kind of fun because, you talk about the catalog and everybody thinks we're just showing products, but sometimes they don't understand all of the different data sources and the nuances and all the different elements that might need to come together to show a simple product catalog, right? I mean, we've got one in particular I'm thinking about right now, and they don't even have SKUs. It's literally everything is made to order, right? They sell raw products. They're a manufacturing company. And so there's things like government compliance for products. There's tensile strength and hot and cold requirements and chemical resistance. And I mean, just the crazy amount of things that can happen in the number of businesses that we've seen. This really is, I love the term unpack a lot. Yeah, because there's going to be a lot. So, first off, let's just define what a catalog system integration is. So, at a high level, we're taking the product catalog on the website and we have to populate it with a significant amount of data. And that data might be coming from multiple and different sources. So, basically, that's done through integration. It could be with a platform like Clarity Connect. It could be with there's many of them out there. We've done, I started counting through the other day looking, and we've done getting close to 4,000 integrations over 16 years. I mean, that is just crazy when you start talking. And it's because even though we may have only done like 1,500 sites, which in and of itself is a lot, some integrations, I mean, one client in particular, we had close to 30 integrations. We integrated 26 different hardware stores, and then we integrated their CMS, we integrated their 3PL, we integrated their WMS. It ended up, I think, somewhere close to 32 different integrations for a single project, right? So integration is a big deal. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to the definition?
Yeah, I would just say in general, like just to kind of stub out some of these topics, and we're about to go into detail here. Like, who is this for as well? This is basically for anyone who has some level of kind of self-service that you're looking to implement within your e-commerce experience for users. And to give you some specifics, this would be things like customer specific pricing, detailed inventory, like you said, Ron, the ability to kind of look at, buy online, pick up in store, being able to deal with different jurisdictions and the rules. Maybe there are regulations around what people can see or what they can order. Maybe it's a quoting process and they need a wizard to walk them through that. Maybe it's millions and millions or hundreds of millions of variations of products. And we've got to be able to present that in a way that is performant and user friendly. And the list does go on. So we're going to be kind of decomposing those, and we'll try to keep it fairly high level, but still get into enough weeds that you'll have some detailed notes. And for any one of these areas that we're diving into, there is, of course, really a relatively infinite depth that we can get into for your particular space. So we want you to keep in mind that we're always happy to chat. You can leave comments below, and we're happy to kind of go into more detail in whatever format works best for you. So with that, I'd say we dive into the first focus area.
All right. So let's talk briefly about some of the different data sources. And one that I missed on this slide could just be the supply chain, right? I mean, there could be EDI with dozens of supply chain vendors that are participating in your buying group. You can imagine Costco and how many vendors and suppliers they're connected to, right? So maybe we'll just start and I'll mention that one and then I'll let you kind of go in and we'll just go down each one of these and just kind of dive into it. So let's just start with the potential for EDI and API integrations to the supply chain and the different vendors. So I'll kind of touch base on that one and then I'll kind of turn it over to you and let you go through some of these others. So the supply chain is a big one. That could be simply a bidirectional integration for a couple different things. I remember one client we did that was connected they were a supply chain for toner cartridges for printers, right? And so every single Staples, Office Max, Office Depot, right, we had to connect to them with our platform so that when I would go to staples.com and place an order for a toner cartridge, that order would then get sent from Staples along with the shipping information to our client. Our platform would process it, build the shipping label, and then our client would pick and pack it, ship it out, put the label on it. So it would show up at my doorstep looking like it came from Staples. Meanwhile, our platform then, once it was shipped, would have to take the tracking status and the order status and pump that back up to Staples so that the client purchasing it could log into Staples and get an update it on their order, where it is, and be able to track it. So there's usually at least a simple bi-directional for orders. And then there's also usually potentially a bi-directional for the Staples to order, because if Staples is ordering from a supplier and they're stocking stuff, they may have an order go in for a purchase order when low stock comes to replenish their stock. And the vendor may be sending up all of the product information, the dimensional weights, the inventory stock levels, things like that. So there's usually, at least for orders and for inventory, multiple bi-directional connections, even with just the supply chain. So I've covered kind of the supply chain. Is there anything else you want to add to that one, or you want to go ahead and dive into some of these others?
Yeah, I think you did a great job, and I would say, just kind of briefly extending on that, a lot of our clients work with distribution companies, 3PL companies that even have, different warehouse locations, distribution locations, so we can work with them too. There is a lot of fidelity here, and the big takeaway is that if you don't work with an integration platform or a partner that can deliver a buying group platform with an integration platform capability, then you're going to have to figure this out, is kind of the bottom line. I mean, this is, I don't want to say it's a guaranteed requirement, but it most likely is. And it's the
It
most
is.
likely kind of low friction path, right? So
Yeah,
definitely want to dig into that. And then, like you said, Ron, there are several other key areas. And just to kind of go through a few of them, I think most obvious for everyone is the accounting, ERP. You may have other similar systems, but typically it's going to be accounting, back office, ERP, warehouse management, possibly all of the above. But ultimately, we can integrate with basically any ERP system that has an API access. We've already successfully integrated with 50 of the most popular ERPs on the face of the planet. And then, of course, really anything that has access. It can be API, database, it can be EDI, really any format where we can interact with it, flat file, you name it, we can interact with it. So this is really important, because kind of the name of the game at this phase, and to be able to enable self-service, not just for the end user, but also for your internal team, is to get content pushed out to the site and allow that content to reflect kind of the source of truth for wherever that is. So if you have a source of truth for inventory, a source of truth for pricing, maybe you have a PIM, which is managing the actual marketing content. Really the list of different sources of truth can be quite large depending on how scaled up your organization is. And really, it's incumbent on your buying group software, your group purchasing organization software, to be able to bring all of this data together and marry it effectively within the user's experience, and then leverage the right business logic so that whenever we're integrating the ERP, the PIM, and the warehouse management system, then we are accurately reflecting the content with category, subcategory, all the attributes that we want to show on the site, the variations, possibly the customer specific pricing, the locations and the inventory at the different locations. This could be for distribution purposes. It could be for, possibly jurisdictional issues with, maybe it's a restricted chemical and we can't show it in certain regions, things like that. So all of this then needs to be able to tie back to any kind of inventory management and order management. Typically, that's going to be through the above mentioned systems, so ERPs, PIMS, warehouse management, but it could be another model that you have. We do a lot of work with clients who have custom systems. And really, Ron, like whenever someone gets at scale, they do weird stuff, but it's weird to the outside world because it's what works best for their business. And you
Right.
kind of get to the point once you operate at scale where you realize like there isn't really an easy solution. And in most cases, like if you're going to look at the cost benefit analysis, you're going to get a lot of benefit for the spend if you're focusing on making everything seamless for the customer's workflow and for the business's workflow, instead of trying to make the business and the customer kind of adjust to the software limitations. So we really want to kind of make that a key takeaway from this integration aspect is we need to be able to get the data from the source of truth for wherever that is. And you should be able to continue to operate your business and scale it up. Now, obviously, if the business isn't doing something that is just, optimized enough, and we know that as a group, we're going to call that out and say, this isn't best practice. Doesn't mean we're not willing to do it, but you may want to think about doing it this way. This is what a lot of folks in your kind of specialty area do to handle this with their inventory. Or maybe you're trying to roll out something new, and you're not very experienced with it. That's where having an experienced partner is going to potentially help you save some time. But ultimately, the key takeaway with all these integrations is they really need to be able to kind of continue to operate the way that you have them designed. And the buying group software needs to pull all this data in seamlessly, without you having to do a lot of manual work.
Yeah, and you made a key point there that I want to touch on. You talked about having a platform that can be customized and adapt to your business processes versus forcing you into something. But the second half of that, that's really interesting, and I have this conversation all the time when I'm talking to our larger clients. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard the comment something close to, "We've done it this way for 50 years. The owner's never going to change." And I'm like, that's great. You know what happened to Blockbuster, right? The same kind of thing. It's called continuous innovation, right? If you're not continually innovating, you're going to become old. The thing is that you may have been doing business this way for 50 years, and this may work really well, and it's a family owned business, and that's awesome. However, those people that have been purchasing you for the last 30, 35 years, 40 years, they're going to retire. And the younger generation is going to take their place that grew up on phones. And those millennials and Gen Xers are going to want to have a technology solution to buy. And they're going to come to your site and think it's ancient, and they're not going to buy from you anymore. And you're going to literally start dropping off some of your most loyal clients. We've seen it numerous times. So I remember one of our clients where we did a hybrid where we went ahead and re-implemented very similar to their old buying purchase, but then we designed a new wizard, a selection tool, right, for the millennials that could walk them through doing the same thing in about 30 seconds that would take 3 or 4 minutes to do it the old way, right? So sometimes make sure to listen to I hear clients, the term they use a lot is, we don't know what we don't know. Tell us what you know. You do this a lot. Tell us what the best practices are. So I would encourage you, when you meet and sit down with your vendor, it's okay to say you may not know, or there may be a better mousetrap, especially when you talk to a vendor like Clarity who's done this hundreds of times. We probably have a lot of ideas. We've seen it work a lot. We've seen it fail a lot. And that's is what our business is, to try to improve your processes. So let's go ahead and start talking about some of the different capabilities about the catalog itself and how integrating is going to expose a lot of additional features. So this, you mentioned a couple of these customer specific pricing and a couple of them, but I want you to kind of just shred this, right? Because the catalog has to do a lot, because buying groups aren't just like Costco, you're a member or you're not, right? Buying groups for us can be a whole myriad of different things. So I want you to go ahead and shred through some of these.
Absolutely. So I just want to say, man, that is so dead on with talking about the customer's experience. And we know for a lot of folks listening to this, you're busy and you're trying to operate the business in addition to getting another piece of software in place, or getting something optimized. So that is what companies like ours focus on, and we really want to help you at least be aware of some of the things that you may not know, and that you may not have been exposed to. So I think, first and foremost with some of these features, the concept is, if you can, to some extent, you want to kind of have this set of thoughts running through your mind at all times. First of all, try to put yourself in the shoes of your customer and some of the different roles that those customer kind of avatars are going to represent. What are some of the personas, and what are they thinking, and what do they need? Because you probably have different personas, different types of roles that are going to be kind of interacting within your site. Um, and like you said, Ron, there's a demographic consideration there too. So you might even have like different kind of preferences for how to navigate the site depending on someone's kind of demographic background or their disposition to technology, for example. So you want to be able to present this data with a visual format, maybe with a wizard format. So maybe some pictures and icons, with a hierarchical structure. So we need to be able to bring in basic catalog information, but present it in a compelling way that makes sense. And you don't want to overdo it either, because frankly, people are busy. They're not coming to your site to be wowed in most cases. I don't think they're opposed to that, but that's not their purpose for being there. They're trying to get work done and get value and purchase something that they need. So it needs to tend toward having a baseline of very solid utility throughout their experience. And so ask yourself, like, what does that mean for the different personas? Typically, you're going to need to have a great hierarchy. And this can be very challenging. It sounds like, oh, yeah, great hierarchy, no big deal. Well, actually, it is. That's probably one of the biggest problems most businesses face, is like, you're busy scaling this business. Your entire team is busy scaling the business. And so, how do you get a great hierarchy in? We can do a couple of different things, and I won't go into all the weeds here, but the main concept would be, if you already have this, we can bring it in. Maybe we need to review and audit together and make sure that this is solid, but we can bring it in from a source of truth. We can also leverage industry best practices for hierarchical structure, and we can pull from kind of standard hierarchical structure. So I'm talking about category, subcategory, attributes within each subcategory. So think different product types, and what are the nuances of like what people would search and filter on for those different product types. Okay. Now, again, I won't go into all the detail on that. There's a lot more there that we can get into. But the next thing that we'll talk about is, again, putting yourself into these different personas or roles. Well, if you're going to the site and you're looking for the benefits of a group purchasing organization, fundamentally, you're looking for inventory, fulfillment, and pricing. And those are kind of like beyond some of the other aspects. Those have to be there. And if they're not, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it needs to be accurate and up to date. Ideally, the whole point of having this software is so that we can self-serve these customers in the buying group. And a lot of kind of the ethos and the philosophy of the buying group, the group purchasing organization, should be beyond what it is for typical organization. It's to serve the members. And so we really want to take advantage of that with this integration. So we want to, as much as possible, get the information out transparently, rapidly, with high integrity around the different tiers, the different scope of products that are presented, and then the associated customer specific pricing. There may be multi-tiered pricing. And so just to kind of break some of these down, an example of a customer specific pricing might be, this one customer was the first customer that joined the buying group, and they just get 20% off on everything. And then the rest of the customers fall into three different tiers. So maybe they have a role assigned to them, and based on their role, they either get a 5%, 10%, or 15% discount. So that customer specific pricing is 20%. Maybe it's just customer specific for one product. Maybe the sales team made a deal and there was a vendor that we wanted to start bringing into the buying group. And this one customer committed, no matter what, every quarter, I will buy 1,000 units. If no one else buys anything, I will buy the 1,000 units as long as you give me a 20% discount. And then whatever anyone else doesn't buy, I will soak up. But if all 1,000 units are sold to other members, great. So we can do things like that. to help you kind of expand your reach and leverage the customer specific pricing or discounts to be able to do that. But then the typical scenario would be, the customers would have different tiers of pricing based on their roles. This can be granular down to a product category, subcategory, or category level. It can be based on purchase amount. So if somebody purchases $100,000 worth of items during the year, then they start to get a 2% additional discount, and the next 100,000 they get another 1%. So we can do things like that. The other thing that I would say, and I'm kind of hitting on a lot of topics, so Ron, I'm expecting you to go back and tweak some of these for folks and kind of point a few other things out for you guys. But one of the other big things that we want to look at here is, again, putting yourself in the shoes of the user. So, like, we want to learn what they're looking for. So we have a tracking system inside of the buying group software that we provide that actually tells us what people are looking at. And it's built into the platform. It's not a third party, it's native to the platform. And this allows us to do machine learning, just really simple suggestions. We can do some really sophisticated or very simple suggestions, just showing them, like, people like with your browsing history on the site have found these items to be helpful. You seem like you're focusing on these categories the most. We're going to show you that content more when you're on the site. And being able to kind of like present information based on selections. So, if they're looking at a certain product type, then they need to have related accessories, possibly the ability to, work with a kit, and break it apart, things like that. That ultimately, if you're buying in a buying group scenario and you bulk purchase something and you don't have a necessary component, that could be a showstopper for you. So we want to be able to provide this recommended and related content, related purchases, etc.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on these, Ron? I'd love for you to kind of drill down on some of them as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we've talked a lot about the front end tiers, but we really didn't talk about the back end tiers too, because tiers is a really big one. You might have a tier for CFOs. They're the only ones that can come in and pay an invoice. You might have a procurement manager that approves all orders over $1,000. So any of your users can come in and they can order up to $1,000. If a cart goes over $1,000, it has to go through an approval process. Um, the dynamic content, you may have a certain tier that are dealers or redistributors, and so they need all of the warranty brochures and catalogs and other things that go along with reselling the products. So when they log in, they have a whole other section of the website and or of the products that makes it available so they can download the additional marketing collateral and videos and demonstration collateral for reselling the products and things like that. So yeah, we could literally spend an hour on this slide alone. But yeah, that's a great one. I think you touched on almost everything there. So good job. The next one would be talking about automating the orders process. So I'm going to hit just a quick high level what we're talking about automation here, and then I'll have you kind of dive into the technicality of it. So if you're integrating your orders with your back office system, this could be, and I'm just going to kind of cover the high level of the simplicity of what we normally see. Normally, it's at least integrated with the ERP for fulfillment, but about 10% of the time, it's also integrated with the CRM for the sales insight. So, for example, Chris is going to go buy a lot of stuff for clarity from whatever it is, Office Depot, Office Max. And we're a corporate account, so we buy a lot of stuff. Well, the sales rep sitting up there in the CRM tracking Chris's buying behavior. So they're going to want to know stuff like, if Chris hasn't logged in 60 days, I want a report called clients at risk, because I need to pick up the phone and call Chris and ask him what's going on, right? So in the CRM, I might be tracking things like how much they're buying, the quantity that they're buying, maybe the number of times they're logging in, and maybe that's enough. If they're not logging in, I know they're at risk. If I'm tracking their sales and their sales drops more than 10% or 15% month over month, I'm going to pick up the phone. I might want to do things like that. I might want to know the types of things that they're buying from a marketing perspective so I can go in and go, hey, Chris, 90% of the time is buying hand tools and only 10% power tools. We make a lot more margin on our power tools. So I'm going to serve him up some coupons on some power tools and see if I can get him buying more power tools. Or conversely, every time Chris goes in, he puts hand tools in his cart. He looks at hand tools 90% of the time, but he never seems to buy. I'm going to give him next time he comes in a 10% coupon off hand tools and see if we can get him to buy some of those tools that he keeps looking at. So that might be something just from the CRM side. From the order side, we're going to take that order and flip it through so it can be pick and pack. So first off, for fulfillment, the order is usually going to go into the back end ERP so that they can do the fulfillment. And on the bi-directional side of that, we're wanting to make sure to update the inventory that has been deprecated and shipped back. We want to take the order status. Maybe the order goes from pending to confirmed to back ordered to delayed to estimated ship time to shipped. And here's the tracking status. And we've got 6, 7, 8 different updates to the order so Chris can track those orders in the platform. The other thing too would be to track the fulfillment and the shipping throughout on the back office platform. The other thing in orders that a lot of people don't think about, and we've got numerous clients here in North America that do this, they might have an office for fulfillment here in the States, but they handle Canadian dollar orders on a website up in Canada quite often. So the order gets placed in Canadian dollars, and then they do not want or can't handle the order in Canadian dollars internally because it messes up accounting, right? It's very difficult to handle that kind of information. So one of the things we do with Connect in the middle is we talked about the integration in a previous slide. We might be connecting the buying group platform with the back office ERP, but in the middle, we might be connecting to the 3PL to get delayed and shipping status information about customs and duties. We might be having a conversion API right in the middle where the order comes in Canadian dollars. We parse the order, go up and ask the API, okay, this is in Canadian dollars. What's the exchange rate right now? Change it to US dollars, update the order before placing the order into the ERP. So the accounting team and everybody in the US that's fulfilling the order don't have to deal with the multiple currencies. That could be another simple one. So that one happens quite often. International orders and things like that. The order may be placed here, but the targeted shipping address is in France. So now all of a sudden we have to start doing things like VAT, taxes, intermodal shipping, different things like that. So we want to be able to, when it comes to the orders, the most important thing is to, what is the panacea, right? What is utopia for you? What could you possibly automate? Most of my clients are like, we just want to do it real easy. We just need this. And I'm like, yeah, but what do you want? Tell me what you want, because probably 90% of what you want, we have out of the box because we literally do this day in and day out. So my best piece of information is sit down and dream big. Write every single thing down that you can possibly want. Then when you go shopping for a platform, if one vendor says, oh my gosh, that's pie in the sky, I can give you about 10% of that. You might find another vendor that says, yeah, 90% of that's out of the box. The last 10%, the last mile we can do, but it might only cost a couple grand to automate that. You're like, I can really have everything I want. You never know if you don't ask. And then again, back to what we said, if you don't know what you don't know, maybe you sit down and ask them, what would you do? What have you seen others like us do? What do you think are best practices? And spend a significant amount of time during your upfront discovery to really mock up a lot of these different scenarios, because the fact of the matter is most of it's available to you. You just don't know that it's available to you. So, Chris, go ahead and dive into anything you want regarding the order system here.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there's so much here that we can also dig into around just kind of governance within the system. Because whenever you're working with more than one kind of party in the system, especially with shipping and fulfillment, inventory and lead time, and even the pricing up front with the group ordering process, these can be really challenging experiences for different members because they actually need the items. Like, it's great that they're getting a discount. That's awesome. But they need them by a certain date or else it's a problem. And so there are a couple of things here that we want to be careful about. And this is kind of going into integrating with kind of notifications and messaging and tying back all of this data that we're pulling in into workflows. But ultimately, whenever there's a group purchase, we may need a certain number of orders before we can actually execute on placing the order with the, possibly the manufacturer, a distributor, or being able to fill a container, or some kind of truckload, etc. So that's the first thing. What is the governance there? And to be specific, this would be things like this group order. Everyone needs to place their orders by this date and time, and then they receive notifications if they've expressed interest in participating and they haven't participated yet. And then maybe there's even a model where we rate how high of an integrity there is around people saying they're going to participate and then they don't. And so being able to have some basic sophistication around this governance so that we're engaging folks and notifying them, and giving them clear expectations. And that's something that you'll hear throughout our talks is expectation management with the end customer. This is going to go like so far to make their
Yeah.
self-service experience a really positive one. Now, in addition to the kind of pieces there, then you also have the order is placed, the fulfillment is underway. What's the status? And this is where integrations can truly be night and day, because some businesses, they're going to be able to adapt and make fine tuning adjustments if they just know what's going on. They just need to know. And the credibility of your buying group as a whole is on the line whenever we're operating this software. And they need to know, the members need to know, if something is on its way and it's delayed, then they can make some changes. So the integration ought to be able to dig deep as possible, and as deep as you would like to invest into to make those integrations possible, but be able to reflect the status of where the order is and where the shipment is, et cetera, in its route. And this is really important for the different vendors that you're working with as well, that you're able to integrate with them seamlessly, too, so that they get a notification that, hey, there's an order. Um, Maybe they didn't find out about the order because the integration wasn't very good, and this caused a bunch of delays. So these are all high level concepts that just kind of speak to what you just hit on.
Yeah. And I love the comment about the notifications. That kind of leads us right into the next one when we're really talking about notifications, especially with regards to returns, right? So, returns is and can be one of the most complex features alone of any e-commerce, whether it's buying group or not, right? I mean, we have returns in our platform, and I'm so surprised how many times I get a call asking about our platform. Do you have returns? Sure. Doesn't everybody have returns? And the answer comes back most of the time, no, which surprises me. But it's because it's so complex, right? Is a return just simply, hey, I need to return? And so I click a box, I do a return. And like our platform, we have to do a simple way out of the box because you can't make assumptions about everybody, right? When you have an SMB come in and a startup, they don't even have QuickBooks, they don't have anything. You can't integrate into a very complex workflow system. You literally have to do everything on the site. So it might be simply, I need to return this item. They check a box, they hit submit, it sends the return into the system for approval. And then they have to go in and email them the return label or a process, email them an email of what the process is to return it, or they can reject or approve it. And that's what we have, and we have that out of the box. But then typically, using our Connect platform, we're integrating into an ERP system where we may have to go back in, and I know other things we have out of the box. We've got, is it eligible for return? Yes or no. If it's a perishable and they want to return it, then they're not going to return the item. They're going to discard of the item. And so now we have to track how many times we do that. Are they abusing the system and they know that they're working the system? Is there a restocking fee? Do certain suppliers take the item back and they have to see the item before they'll issue an RMA for a replacement? Do they refurbish the item? Do they simply replace it? Do they have you replace it? I mean, there are so many iterations of returns. Um, so the thing is you can analysis paralysis. You can get stuck there very, very easily. So I love this bullet about keeping the process in the UI simple, right? It's got to be stupid simple. They got to be able to go in and go, I either need to ask, how do I check to see if this is even eligible for return? Do you have an FAQ? Is there a self-service area? Is it on the screen of the product? Can they go back to the product in the catalog and download? Is there a tab for warranty information? Is there an FAQ for returns? Is there a section on the website called FAQs or return policy? Have you published that well? You always hear returns for 30 days with receipt, right? And they'll have that in stores and brick and mortar because they're clear on that. They want to be 100% clear when you're leaving that it's posted what the return policy is. And they'll usually print it right on the receipt. So when you get that paper receipt, it'll say right there on the bottom, returns for 14 days with receipt. So you need to do that the same on the online system. So if you want, why don't you dive into some of this information, especially from the technical information on how to deal with notifications? I love your comment about the expectation setting. And that is also really true around returns because now they're upset usually when they want to return something. So trying to retain that customer, right, is even more important now when they're mad. And so now all of a sudden notifications have to work and they have to be timely.
That's right. Yeah. So this is a really important one for sure, for the exact reason that you just stated. Like, normally when this there is a return, there's an opportunity to do the right thing and take great care of the customer. And this is mostly about communication and expectations. And so the notifications are important for both the customer and for the internal team. And so, one of the things that's most challenging about this is a lot of times, if we're not fully integrated to how your team handles returns, we're going to be asking them to change their process. And that can be really tough. In theory, it's not, it's just do this extra thing, but we're human beings. So, what we want to do with the software is make it so that it just works with how you operate your business already. So, how do you do returns right now? Where does the information go? And let's get that same information in that same place so that people can focus on doing their job, not learning something new. So that's the first thing. And really, like, the second big piece is, how do you communicate around returns right now? Maybe we want to improve that with the notifications with this software, but fundamentally, a lot of the principles ought to be the same. And maybe we're looking to incrementally improve that, but ultimately, it should be a matter of, both internal and external notification for folks so that we're keeping them apprised and managing the expectations. The other thing that I want to say about the returns is, to some extent, there's a lot of fidelity of information that the user can provide with their return. So this can be things like, what is the exact item? What are the reasons? Maybe we can incorporate logic, and this is how our system is set up now, so that there's kind of like a dependency. When someone selects a reason, then they can drill down further, and we can have some workflow so that if it's a certain reason, we might be able to connect them with the manufacturer and have an agreement with the manufacturer that they're going to fulfill a return very rapidly. And so that can make this kind of a faster process for our users. The other thing that we can consider is, just in general, whenever we're dealing with a return process, the customer is busy. they don't they don't do this all the time, and so how can we explain it to them? Like you said, Ron, in this kind of expectation setting piece, like, how can we explain it to them? Not because they can't figure out something complicated, but because they're busy and they don't need another thing to have to apply their brain power and their energy to. So how can we make it really, really simple for them? Just a simple few steps, and keep it very clean and make it very concrete, and then keep them apprised. So I'm not passionate about this part of the process at all.
At all. Yeah, and the number of conversations you and I've had over the last decade about it all comes back to integrity, right? If you don't have integrity, you're not going to succeed, right? But if
That's
you have
right.
integrity, even when things go awry, if people know you have integrity and you're going to take care of them, um, that goes a long way, right? So let's talk
Absolutely.
about some of the considerations about the members themselves and about buying groups and some of the things that the platform and the catalog may need to do with regard to some of the different members. Um, Obviously, with our platform, one of the things that I always talk about is the customability and the scalability, right? Because one thing I know for sure, just like the weather here in Texas, wait 15 minutes and it's going to change, right? People's business change too. You may have had your business the last 50 years and say, we've done business this way for the last 50 years. If we sat down and really talked about all the things that you changed over the last 50 years, um, you would be surprised if you started writing it down. Most people just think nothing ever changes, but everything changes and it changes all the time. Some of it within your control and a significant amount of it outside of your control. So you want to make sure that the platform can scale both up and down, both in and out, um, depth and breadth. Consider the long term impacts of the possible integrations. Can we? One of our clients, Chris, mentioned something earlier about millions of SKUs, and it reminded me of one of our clients. Gosh, it's been a few years, but he came to me and he said he had 50 million SKUs. And I said, 50 million SKUs, that's a first for me. I mean, we've got a couple clients that are in the millions, but 50 million, that's new to me. I've never heard of anybody with 50 million. And he said, well, I've been in the business for 75 years. And although I only stock between me and my suppliers 3 million SKUs, having been in the business 75 years, my platform has every single part number for the last 75 years and what today's replacement part is for that part number, as well as every competing part number and every other manufacturer and OEM part number. So for every part number that I have, I might have anywhere from 3 to 10 additional part numbers that this part is a replacement for. So if anybody comes to that site looking to fix this water heater from 37 years ago, built out of this country, and they put in a part number, I have to have the replacement part for that for every single piece of equipment out there for the last 75 years. So you need to make sure that as part of the long-term implications of the integrations are the part numbers, the replacement part numbers, and the ability to serve those clients. Chris kind of said it quickly. You want to be able to serve them quickly. The last bullet on the screen, I think, says it best. You want to make it easier for them to both order and reorder from you than to go elsewhere, because that's when you win, right? So, a couple of the things here, and obviously, I want you to go into anything you want to touch, but hard and soft stops is a great one, right? I'd love you to just shred hard and soft stops and talk about it generically, and then if you want, go into how our platform deals with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of, depending on the way that you implement it with your particular buying group or group purchasing organization. This is, a very nuanced and detailed aspect of how the buying group itself implements the price and, quantity based discounts, etc. But ultimately, there has to be an ability for within a certain time period for people to order enough of the items, and maybe once the quantity of items ordered or the dollar amount or the container fill gets to a certain break point, or a hard or a soft stop, then the price goes down further, because now we're getting another price break with the manufacturer or whatever the distributor, whoever it is at that other end of the transaction. And so ultimately, we need to be able to convey this to the user. If you buy this many of this item, then the price goes down by this amount. The next break is this price break. And then, there can be things like the total combined cost of the order needs to be this amount and you get this much of a discount. Or, you can place these items for order, but we're not sure that you're going to get this discount because they're dependent on other people who said they're going to purchase, but they haven't purchased yet. So coordinating all of these details among the members, like this is ultimately the responsibility of the buying group. And you can almost see it as, to some extent, it's kind of the same idea as like an auction, but it's effectively like, if all of the members can get to this certain quantity, then they win the auction of getting these discounts. And we're trying to coordinate everyone through this buying group so that they can get the most discount possible while still getting the items fulfilled in the timeline that the majority, if not everyone in that group purchase, needs them by. And so we're trying to kind of like leverage those factors and optimize within those. So there's a lot more detail to hard and soft stops. There's a lot around notifications, a lot around kind of getting participation, because again, a lot of people are just super busy, and we want to be intelligent about how often we notify them. We don't want to be a nuisance. So if we can see that, like you were talking about earlier, Ron, they keep putting a certain item into their basket, into their cart, but they're not checking out, maybe they're a good candidate for receiving a notification email that, hey, this is a big potential discount if everyone participates. And here's the time limit, kind of a deal. So that's pretty interesting too. But this, like, ultimately, this ties into really closely to bulk purchasing options. And like in general, the idea again is that we need to be able to present the different price breaks. And this can be really easy to understand conceptually, but logistically extremely complex to implement. I mean, think about it. Where are you getting all this data from? Do you have all of it precisely and accurately in your ERP? If so, that's great. Are you keeping it up to date? Again, if so, like, that's awesome. We can just integrate it and we're done. A lot of our clients that are buying groups, group purchasing organizations, they don't necessarily have all of the data. They have a lot of it for certain vendors. Some vendors don't do a very good job of normalizing their data, and they actually just don't really have it anywhere in a data format. It might be like PDFs and things like that. So you're probably going to have a spectrum of participation with regards to kind of standardized data. And so we're going to want to collaborate and figure out how you want to bring that data in that isn't standardized, and what the model is going to be for that as well. So that's really where the integration comes into this, is being able to seamlessly and consistently bring in that data despite the data format that it's sourcing from.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to give just one example, a real world example of a hard and soft stop. I'm going to end up showing one on the screen before we go to our last section here. So, the one hard stop that I think almost everybody on this call has done and has seen many times, every time you go to Costco, what happens when you go to buy a bottle of Heinz ketchup? You go to pick it up and it's in a pack of two. That's a hard stop. You can't buy a bottle of ketchup. Stop. They stop. There's a limit, and that's part of the negotiation that distributor that's selling the Heinz ketchup to, when they made that discount for Costco, so Costco could sell it to their buying group for that discount. The hard stop was, tell you what, I'll give it to you cheaper if you buy our two 7,000-ounce bottles of ketchup, right? Make everybody buy these bottles of ketchup. They're going to last them, our house, for 3 weeks, but for other houses for 2 years, supply ketchup. So hard stops, that's a simple hard stop. On the screen here, I'm going to put up a screenshot of a soft stop. This is one for one of our clients that sells pool parts. And in this particular screenshot, one of the deals that Hayward came up and said, hey, if we're going to offer this, we're going to sell it in lots of 100. You have to buy 100 units from us at any given time to pack, because most of our stuff weighs enough that the FedEx, UPS people can't deliver this. This is LTL trucking. It's got to be on a pallet. It's very costly. So you have to buy 100 units. So as you can see on the screen here, this could be a hard stop. This is, you have to buy in quantities of 100 or you cannot buy. But as you see here on the screen, it's got a section that says, if you don't, it lets you know that you haven't hit the 100 limit. And if you haven't hit the 100 limit and you don't want to buy 100, then you can pay a $50 fee, and then we'll go ahead and that's what it's going to cost. And so that's a soft stop. We're going to stop your purchase, give you a requirement that you need to surpass or agree to continue this purchase. And that's what a soft stop. So I just wanted to give one quick example of a hard and soft stop, because sometimes they are so complex that people are like, yeah, that doesn't apply to me, but it applies in our daily lives all the time. So those are some of the hard and soft stops. Let's talk about some of the other ones, because we do a lot of chemical manufacturing, right? Sometimes, and we just kind of covered the top one, must purchase in multiples of X, right? So bottles of ketchup at Costco. Every time you go to buy a loaf of bread at Costco, it's in twos, right? Every time I go to buy a pack of croissants, it's in a pack of 100, which I love. But let's talk about, Chris, dive into some of these other ones, especially when it comes to like requiring either documents, certificates. We've done ones where they had to put up their concealed weapons permit for each state that they're in, so we can track where their coverage is for an insurance company. Where they've had to list up their hazmat certificates, so we know if they can ship certain chemicals across state lines. I mean, there are just so many different nuances to this, but go ahead and dive into some of these additional things, especially when it comes into, the third bullet there, embargoes to certain countries. Certain regions might have restrictions. I know when I lived in Utah, we had, my roommate and I, it says no pets. So we went and looked at the agreement, and it specifically called out cats and dogs. I had 3 birds, a tarantula, 2 aquariums, and then my roommate came home with a ferret. And ultimately, we had to get rid of the ferret because the city had an ordinance where ferrets weren't allowed in the city, right? So we had to get rid of that. But it's like there are so many different requirements and nuances, especially when it comes to online purchases. How do you enforce those? And I love that you brought up governance, because I'd forgotten to include governance here, but governance is a big one. So go ahead and dive into some of those applications, especially when it applies to governance.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and I think like this is kind of a nuance for most folks, but you may get to this at some point. So this is kind of an FYI. If this is kind of a requirement for your space, then we encourage you to listen really closely to this portion. But kind of the bottom line with some of these different rules is that you can think of it in the sense of this is a requirement to be able to look at, that they have to meet some criteria. So they may, just to be able to see products, there may be enough kind of regulation pressure essentially that we don't even want them to see anything. And so this could be certain countries where there's an IP block. And so, although that may be relatively rare, this is probably something that's worth at least just putting a simple switch, a setting to turn on, and to be able to show that in good faith we attempted to reasonably block this country. Okay, so that's one extreme example. A much more specific example might be like there's a certain regulation. Gosh, it could be with one of the vendors that you work with. Like they just don't want to sell their items to a certain company. Um, Maybe it's with a state that has a regulation for a certain type of chemical, and you need to be able to verify that that chemical isn't in any of the items that your fulfillment process automates. And or maybe there's just an extra fee that has to be paid for some kind of interstate commerce that's going on. And so these are all nuances that we need to be aware of. And I would say like the customs and duties and taxes and things like this, this can be a really significant impact to the end user's cost and their consideration for whether or not they want to purchase. So ultimately, we want to be able to incorporate all of this, and be able to identify. I'm not sure if a lot of folks are aware of this. I'm sure quite a few are on this video, but there are certain laws and regulations around removing taxes or reducing taxes dramatically for certain business types that qualify, that are not just a traditional kind of retail type of a purchase, but they're actually a merchandising business and they qualify under certain criteria. So does the business qualify for that kind of tax advantage? And how are we documenting this? And how are we making sure that we're going through a formal process so that we're not presenting pricing, taxes, customs duties, regulations, governance, that isn't appropriate, and that we are presenting what we're supposed to. Um, Ultimately, the business, the buying group purchasing organization, is of no value to the members if it is bankrupt and sued into oblivion. So we want
Right.
to put reasonable best practices into place, and show that we did what is the best practice, to the best of our ability within the industry's kind of standards. So normally that at a minimum is going to kind of accomplish remediating major risks, and being able to allow for remediation if there are still issues. So um, going into more specifics, it might be a great topic for another video. But we ultimately just want to encourage you, as you're digging into catalog integration for your buying group purchasing organization, know that there are experts out there. We certainly consider ourselves to be experts after all of the work that we've done in this space. And we love interacting with potential clients. There may not be a good fit for us to work together. Worst case, that we will point you in the direction of someone else that might be a good fit, or a solution that will fit your scenario. But we'd love to chat with you if you are considering or digging into this space and have questions. We provide a complimentary discovery process, and we really enjoy learning about how your business operates and how we can help. And again, if there isn't a good fit, we can at least point you towards some really helpful resources. And of course, if there is, then we'll certainly welcome the opportunity to discuss that as well.
Sounds good. Well, stay tuned for next time. We're going to talk about the advanced search capabilities, and we're going to dive into that one. If you enjoyed today's presentation, please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. We look forward to seeing you on a future. Please visit us at clarity-ventures.com. Hit the button to request a free complimentary consultation. I'll jump on a call with you. Would love to chat with you. Look forward to you on our next video. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Ron. Bye for now.
Bye for now.